My name's Beth, and I'm extremely nervous addict. Hi. I don't think I can remember ever feeling this nervous doing a share ever. Generally because I'm quite good at lying to myself. I'm quite good at this thing called denial, and I've got a massive ego, so usually I can sort of like cruise through most situations blindly. But I've had quite a long time build up to this, and I took a couple of days off work before coming so that I could beautify myself. Yeah, it was like the worst decision ever. I was having these beauty treatments, and I just had like hours to think. And the result is that I stand here before you gripped by self-obsessed, self-centered, self-seeking fear. And that's the truth. And before I went up to my room, I sort of pleaded with God for some control. Please take my nerves away so I can sound good. And it didn't work. So I'm nervous. But I'm hoping that through the course of speaking and hearing a bit of laughter, maybe some identification, laughter, and maybe some heckling, because I quite like that, a bit of energy. Sarah's going to tell me to shut up and tell me I'm lying on a few occasions. I don't mind this. The nerves will just slip away, and then something bigger and much better than me will hopefully step right in. Because that's definitely what's needed for this addict. First of all, welcome. Welcome to everyone that's come all this way from all over the world. Welcome to the UK. And I hope that... I hope you're feeling the love. I hope you're getting some warmth, and that us English aren't being too up ourselves and hoity-toity and la-di-da. And that fellowship warmth. You know, I know that thing when you go away, it's sort of like you're at home immediately. And I hope that you're getting that here. You know, I'm sure you are. You know, welcome home. You know, this is your home. And I was just thinking, wow, Bournemouth, I love you. And it's so good that you're here. I'm from Bournemouth. You must come and visit Bournemouth if you get a chance before you go back to wherever you're going. It's a beautiful little place, but it's just so full of spirit. And for me, it's where my recovery just rocketed, you know, because my story is, and apologies to my home group members who know my story, verbatim probably. My story is that I didn't want to get clean, you know, that's the truth. I'd sort of given up. I was a very proud and spiritually retarded individual. That is the truth. I wasn't brought up with any sort of religious teaching or anything. I was brought up by people that just rocked out in the 60s, and they were on this massive come down in the 70s, and they had loads of kids, and they lived on ashrams and did meditation, and a lot of them sort of never come down off an LSD trip they had in like 1965. And us kids were just like wandering around the place making up the rules. It was a bit like Lord of the Flies, but you know, there was probably less food, to be honest. And we had this whole thing where we were the kids and they were the adults. And, you know, the adults used to have this satsang thing. They'd sit around, they'd put blankets over their heads, and they'd do this meditation. And we'd have our own meetings. Do you know what I mean? And we'd sit there and, you know, we'd pretend to meditate and we'd just slag off the adults. Do you know what I mean? That's just what we did. Just resentful, especially me. I was really quite resentful. And the lack of food situation was not funny because we had goats, yeah? We had goats, and they were hungry as well. And goats can break into anything, yeah? And they're so rude, right? We used to get these big sacks of muesli, right? And there'd be about 10 raisins in a sack, yeah? And a goat would break in and pick out all 10 raisins, and you'd just be left with a bag of oats, you know? I had really good reason to be resentful. And I sort of held on to that, you know, till I was about 28. Don't talk to me about muesli. adults or goats, you know. I'm 28, I'm still not letting go. Smoking my crack pipe, yeah. Goats. They made me use. No, I had much more elaborate reasons why people made me use, trust me. I'm just joking there a little bit. But yeah, so it wasn't very orthodox is what I'm trying to say. And there was no real, there was no real container. That's the best word for it. There was no real container. It was all very free-willed, and it was all very peace and love, but with no rules, no boundaries. And we just made it up as we went along. You know, we just made it up as we went along. And what I learned through the grace of working the 12 steps is that isn't what made me an addict, you know? Because I had loads of brothers and sisters and loads of, you know, extended family members, all these other kids, all these other hippie kids that were brought up like me. And guess what? Not one of them felt the need to kill themselves with crack cocaine, you know? Not one of them went to the lengths that I did and to the dark places that I went to. And it was only through writing that step 4 that I learned that. That I have to say that was one of the most powerful, earth-shattering experiences for me of the whole of this recovery thing, the whole of the 12 steps, was all these aha, you know, where it's like the ego just cracks enough, you know, and it's like that saying, you know, there has to be cracks for the light to shine through. And, you know, and I was a very fractured being, you know, it was very fractured anyway. But then the steps just cracked it open, you know, and the light just shone through. And for me, in my early recovery, I was just, the steps just, it's got to be said, you know, I had no understanding of God. I'd never gone to a needle exchange. I'd never wanted to have counselling sessions. I'd never wanted to trust anyone in my life. But through the love that my sponsor showed me, the light just came on. The lights came on and it just shone through and my heart just opened up. And all that from a place at the end of my using, because we'll fast forward because we could just be here all night talking about goats and stuff, muesli and raisins. At the end of my recovery, the sad truth is I didn't want to stop. I'd given up with all of the whole, you know, stopping stuff. A few times I'd done detoxes, because obviously if you just stop using drugs, then everything's going to be solved. So I did a few of let's just stop using drugs, you know. I'd be on a traveller site somewhere. People would say, Beth's got a little bit of a problem. We'll put her in this caravan over here. She can sweat it out for a bit. When she comes out of the caravan, ta-da, she'll be all fixed. Because it's just a physical problem. Poor Beth, she's gotten a bit of it. It's just a physical issue. It's fine. Little detox, tidy her up. Miracles have happened. But it's not like that, is it? And I did it a few times and it was so soul-destroying and ego-shattering. That whole process of, yeah, I've sussed it. I'm all better again. Everyone, I look great again. I've sussed, give me a lay-on. Give me an ounce of Coke. I'm all good. Sparkly. And the next minute, crash. You know, and I'm like a stick again and looking like a ghoul and creeping around, you know. And my little ego couldn't cope. So pride stepped in and I was just like, I won't stop then. It's beating me, I just won't stop, you know. And there's a place down the road called Bristol. And it was the biggest blessing for me being in that place. But it was a living nightmare being there too. But it was absolutely essential that I had that to get to that rock bottom. And I'd lost absolutely I'd given up absolutely everything. I couldn't even have a conversation with my own daughter. You know, I distinctly remember my husband at the time that sat over there. Hi, Chris Cross. My ex-husband now, who I love dearly. By the grace of this programme, I love him with all my heart. He's here with his beautiful wife. They've got 2 beautiful children. And I love him with all my heart. He left. He left me in Bristol by myself. Yeah? With my daughter, a heroin habit. He ran off and left me in the crack house. No, I didn't want to leave. Bye. I'll call you. But I thought I loved it there. I thought the crack house was my home. Honestly, I was comfortably numb in that place. And as long as I didn't have to feel anything, you know, I didn't need a toilet break. I didn't need any annual leave or toil. So time off in lieu, please. Nope. Bank holidays? Nah, don't worry about it. I loved it there. You know, that was my place. You know, to the point that, you know, like I said, my husband at the time had gone. My daughter was now living in London with her beautiful grandmother who took her on for me. And I couldn't even have a conversation with her. You know, I'd go over to the phone box on my way. Well, I was going to the phone box to ring up to score, which is why I was in the phone box. And I think, oh yeah, I'll ring my daughter. And I remember one day ringing her, randomly I rang her, and she was like, oh Mum, it's my birthday, you remembered? It's like, I hadn't remembered. And I remember getting a feeling and thinking, yeah, happy birthday, bye. I couldn't go there. I'd shut down. And if anyone came into that place, into the crack house, and they spoke about going somewhere else, like a rehabilitation centre or a detox, I'd be like, shh, get out, you'll be back here. What? You're smoking crack with me here now? Why is that? You'll be back next week. If anyone came and said anything positive, I just didn't want to hear it. Because hope was just too scary, you know? I was too full of fear to even have that hope, because I just could sense failure. And even now, it's so funny, the irony of it, all my inventory shows me that my greatest fear is failure, you know, because my biggest desire is success, you know? And then, on a grand scale of like, I was going to die because of that defect. Yeah, I don't want to get better, I like it here. I haven't eaten for 3 days. I'm seeing things. I've got warrants out, but I like it here. It's an empty place. And the funny thing is, like I said, I'm very spiritually retarded. And it's only after the fact. I'm not one of these people that has these blinding lights experiences of God, you know. And especially in early recovery, it was very much of the intellectual variety, you know. And upon reflection, it's like a few months later or a year later, I'd go, wow, guess what? That was God working in my life. Be like, yeah. What, did you think it was you, Beth? Well, maybe. You know, God has shown up for me time and time again, but because I'm a little bit blinded, you know, I just sort of glide through the situation, and later on it's like, wow, you did that for me. Again, you did that for me. I don't deserve it, and you just did that for me. This is who you are. You just keep doing that stuff for me. And what he did is my stepfather, who brought me up. Yeah, he's beautiful, he's my daddy, yeah. He'd been in prison for 7 years. So this isn't, just to give you an example of what a brilliant person I was. He'd been in prison for 7 years. I'd written 1.5 letters. I'd posted 1 letter, and I made 2 visits 5 minutes before the end of visiting time. That's what a good daughter I was. And I spent the whole time he was in prison slagging everyone off for how badly they treated my dad. Yeah, they owed him money. My mum's run off with someone. Do you know what I mean? And all the time I was just so non-committal to this man. And I found out through the wonders of Facebook, because a guy was in prison with my dad for 5 years, that every single day he was on that sentence, he said, the first thing that I'm going to do when I get out of here is I'm going to go and get my daughter. And he did. And I know that human power isn't what fixes you, but God does work through people. God will work through everything that you let him work through. And there's no doubt that the 4 or 5 years I spent constantly, day in, day out, taking drugs, because I was a resourceful little fucker. That's what my dad used to call me. Day in, day out. There was probably every day an opportunity for me to get away from that life. But it just so happened, at that time when he showed up for me, I was sort of ready. I sort of trusted him enough, and I put myself in his hands. And I did sort of procrastinate a little bit, I didn't say, oh yeah, great, you showed up, let me get my coat. I was like, hey, you've been in prison for 7 years. You haven't smoked any freebase for ages. Let's get some crack. And he was like, all right, we'll just get one. And, because this is the thing. It's like, he's not an addict, yeah? He's a social user. Get on that, yeah? Seriously, I grew up with these people, my uncle, my stepdad, they can socially smoke cocaine. It's the truth. We would have freebase sessions, and I remember distinctly that this one freebase session, I digress, yeah? And I was 17, and there was all these men in the room, and they were all chatting and drinking Martell and washing up coke, and it was so glamorous, and I just wanted to be them. And they were all talking, and then 10 hours later, no one said a word. Shh, pass the bike up. Pass the spoon. Shh. It was getting a bit intense. But I still wanted to stay. And they were smoking and smoking and smoking, and I was feeling worse and worse and worse. And then my dad goes, 6 o'clock, I've got to get home. Your mum's going to freak out if we're not back. I was like, what? So? Who cares? Let's stay. They're still smoking, Dad. No, we're going to go. We're going to leave now because I don't want to upset your mum. That is a normal user. That's someone who can moderate their use. They see the time. They see they've got a responsibility and a commitment to keep. They have enough. They draw a line under it. Me, I cried all the way home. When I got home, I was sent out to cut some wood up and have a think. You've just been freebasing with me all night, Dad, and now you want me to go and have a think and cut some wood. He was trying to help me, yeah? But, that baffled me. And also it baffled my family. So when my dad came to get me out of prison, which brings me back to my point, he thought after he did have to lure me a little bit away from the crack house, yeah? We had to get DFs, then we had to get this, we had to get that. And then as we were leaving Bristol, I was like, I don't want to go. The city limits, you get to the city limits, it's like, I was so attached to that place. And he got me out of there. And of course, in his mind, it's okay, we're going to take Beth away to this cottage. We're going to do this detox. I'm going to see her through this detox. I needed some shoes, a haircut, some clothes. I had a list. It's like I'd only just left Bristol, I got a list. I need all these things, Dad. So we'll get Beth all these things. We'll take her away from the problem, which is obviously Bristol, where the drugs are. And then I'll have my daughter back. Everything's going to be okay. 6 weeks later, my dad looks worse than after 7 years of being in prison. I just like a little parasite, I drained the life out of him. Oh, the poor man. He's like, I've got to go to London. I was thinking you could come with me and go to your sister's for a bit. I was like, yeah, all right. So I went up there and sort of drifted around for a bit. And I just had a terrible spiritual malady. I mean, I thought I'd just stop smoking crack and stop the heroin habit. That seemed sensible. And for the first time in my life, I started liking doctors. They were quite cool. I've never really had a good relationship with doctors before, but they had pills. So I started going and visiting these people, these doctors. Everywhere I went, I rattled. And I thought I'd cured my problem. I hadn't smoked any crack for at least 2 weeks. I hadn't had any heroin for about a week. And I thought I was pretty ready to sort of face the world. And my ex-husband he was going to meetings, and he was on a methadone script, and he tried to 12-step me. He used to steal books from the meetings. And every gyro day, he'd ring me up, because we'd separated for a while at the time. He moved in with a nurse. Figures, doesn't it? We'd meet up on his gyro day. Not my gyro day. No, maybe on my gyro day sometimes. And we'd smoke all his gyro, and then I'd go, all right, see you later, babe. And then he'd have his methadone and his daily special brew, which is like special brew. I don't know if you get that where you come from. It's very strong lager, yeah? And if you're really bad, really bad, yeah? Like bottom trampy. Yeah, then you have... He's like, you need to go to meetings, Beth. They're great. I was like, yeah, right. They're really working for you, aren't they, love? But, you know, he kept pushing it. He left like a little where to find at the flat where I was staying. And, he, you know, let's have it right. He carried the message to me because he left the where to find there. And I hadn't been in the crack house for a while. And I hadn't really had a good go on the coke for a while. And I was restless and irritable and discontent. And he'd moved in with a nurse, and I'd moved in with someone with lots of money. Because it wasn't that I had a problem, it was my husband that was a problem. So I just needed to find someone with lots of money. So obviously, that's a very sensible thing to do. But it wasn't making me happy. It really wasn't making me happy. I was just rocking, yeah? And listening to the Cranberries. Does everyone know what... Do you know who the Cranberries are? It's like Irish ballad music. And it's all very sad, and you want to cut your wrists, and your heart cracks open. And I was mourning my drugs. It's the truth. I could tell myself all, you know, that, oh, I'm upset because of this, and I'm upset, you know, because you've upset me, you know, because I need some shoes. I'm upset because I need some shoes. But no, I was sad because I was missing the chaos, I was missing the crack house, and I was only that far away from going back. And people that don't take drugs are just boring. Yeah, you should go and try living with them. It's terrible. And one night I was sat in this lovely flat with everything that I wanted and everything I needed. And there was this where to find. And I thought, I'm a bit bored. I might try and go to one of those meetings. So I rang them up. I said, yeah, I've got a where to find here. It says to ring you if you want, you know, if you want to go to a meeting. They're like, yeah, we'll come and pick you up. I was like, yeah, I'll come tomorrow. Bye. Put the phone down. Because, you know, I know what they do in those meetings. I knew, yeah? They're all into God, yeah? They're all, like, got serious mental health issues. They're, like, lonely. Do you know what I mean? Just like the most boring, lonely people. They have to go to meetings because they're just boring, yeah? Or they're informers. They're police informers. Now, that last one, I was definitely 100% sure on. Because why would you go in a room, tell people your business and your name, yeah, if it wasn't like some sort of informer club? I seriously did think that. So, anyway, the next night, things were getting really bad. I was again, rocking, listening to the Cranberries. Yeah, oh, yeah, it's really sad for me. Oh. And I thought, oh, I'll ring up again. And this time, they were like, we'll come and pick you up. I was like, no, I'll get there myself, thanks. So I jumped on the tube, and I got taken to exactly the right place for me. I didn't really, it's only looking back now I realised how right that first meeting was, yeah? No one had a big book or any literature. Everyone was in bits. There was people arguing. When I went in, there was people having like tear-ups on the stairs, domestics. You know, it was just really negative, yeah? And I loved it. I knew I was in the right place. Just painful. It was just pain in that room. And, you know, the women tried to talk to me, but they were all horrible. So I got all the men's phone numbers. And I thought, yeah, that was a good meeting. Quite like it there. It's the truth. I also made a point of sharing for about 20 minutes about how bad my life was, how my parents had messed me up, how bad my husband was. It's just amazing. I felt so good after just sharing all my muck in that room. I left feeling a little bit better, you know? I thought, yeah, this recovery thing's great. Honestly, that's what I needed, you know? And because I had all these men's phone numbers, I was definitely going back to a meeting the next day. All the women, they were just bitches anyway. They were looking at me funny. And one of them had, like, nice clothes on. She'd never even taken drugs. I could tell. It's just lonely. I'm never lonely. So, I went back the next day, and this guy had already offered to sponsor me, which was just great. And I thought, I don't know whether I'll let you sponsor me. He didn't look that rich, to be honest. So I thought it must have something to do with money, this whole sponsorship thing. And but I did let him take me for coffee. And we had this coffee after the meeting. It was just me and him. And he said, he started talking to me about the programme. What? He said, it's like, it's a programme, it's of abstinence. I was like, what? What's that word? Didn't know. When I say spiritually retarded, I mean, I didn't know what abstinence was, what amends were. I'd never heard these words. Now, I count myself, right, as quite an intelligent person. It's like, I can keep my own in most conversations. How is it all of these really important words have completely been left out of my whole vocabulary for the whole of my life? Abstinence, what's that then? Can you explain that? Oh, you don't take any drugs whatsoever. I was like, what, not even weed? I had like skunk in my pocket, yeah? Suddenly, I had a little bit of skunk. It felt like I had kilos of it. Do you know what I mean? I felt really like he smelled me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's probably going to get me nicked any minute. And, and I had, in this pocket, I had some chloral, which is like quite a heavy tranquilizer, because the doctors were my best friends at this time. I had some DFs. They felt really sorry for me because I was very, very, very unwell. And Valium. Do you know, I had a chemist, basically, in this pocket. And I just thought, oh, right. But when he said it, a penny dropped. The first penny dropped. And I thought, do you know what? I've tried that before. And I had. I tried the whole, for a little bit of time, just don't use anything, Beth. But what would happen is I'd think, but this weekend, because you haven't done this for this many weeks, you can treat yourself. And what you'll do, you'll buy a bottle of champagne, because that's normal, and that's a treat. And then 6 weeks later, I would have nothing, absolutely nothing, smoking crack again, smoking heroin again. And I thought, in a way, I've tried that, so it did make sense. And the next morning, I smoked my last spliff of skunk weed, and I haven't had a drink or a drug ever since that day. So when I say God, the God of my understanding, which is a continually evolving thing for me, I'm not prescriptive with God because God is so big. I could never hope. All of the religion and all these sort of things are great. They're beautiful things. They bring communities together, but all they do is point towards God. That's all they are. They're just signposts because God is so much bigger than any rules, any regulations, any formulas, any moral values, any virtues. God is bigger than all that, for me. And that's why I love this fellowship. And for someone like me that really was brought up on the outside of society, it is so, so important that the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. And that I do not have to come from any particular social group. I do not have to be brought up with any specific religious background. I don't have to be educated. I don't have to be wealthy. And I don't have to be pretty to be here, All I have to do is be wounded enough, And I was definitely wounded enough. Because when he said that to me, something moved in me. And I thought, okay, maybe I can be part of your group. And for the first time in my life, I sort of surrendered to being part of a group that did have sort of a set of rules and, a way of being that was gentle enough for me to embrace it. It wasn't like you walked in the door and it was like, you've got to read this and you've got to look like that and you've got to believe in this, It was just so gentle, And even though everyone was in bits in those meetings and really none of them had done past a step 3, I know that now. I know that that's what was going on there. It was okay because there was still enough respect to hear each other, There was still that desire from those people to go into that room and be there together because they obviously didn't want the life they'd left outside the room. And that was enough of a message to carry to me. They didn't have to be big book bashers. They didn't have to act and speak like they had all the answers because there was something so much bigger than that room full of people working through them all, And that is the God of my understanding. The very God that was there in that room when I walked into that first meeting is the same God that's here now. And he just shows up in so many different ways. So for me, I read a lot of things still to inspire me. I've become familiar with the very old collection of books that we call the Bible. I read some Buddhist stuff. I'm a bit of a pagan. I've got a pagan soul, but all of this stuff just points me towards God, and whatever is good and whatever helps me to feel connected and feel love for another human being, that is my God, And what recovery's taught me is that I've just got to be ready for it to come in whatever way it wants to come. If I try to box it up, I just make my world small. And I don't want to do that anymore. My world was in a rock. My world was in a wrap. My world was in a syringe. It was so, so small and so meaningless. And there was no room for anything else. Not relationship, not love, not feelings. And all it was that I didn't want to suffer. I didn't want to suffer. I didn't want to experience suffering. I didn't want my ego to suffer. I didn't want to suffer physically. And the beauty of this program isn't that I've got a job and I've got my kids back and this stuff, I can get my hair cut. It is that I can suffer. I can suffer in recovery, I can have those dark times and they don't scare me anymore. When I was listening to the Cranberries in that flat just before I came to the meetings, I was so scared I was never going to stop crying. I was so scared that darkness that's always inside me, it's still there now, was just going to swallow me up. But through the grace of working these 12 steps, I can have that darkness, but I can have the light as well. It's both those things for me. And it's through the things that I haven't wanted to happen, through my stepfather, the guy that came out of prison and brought me to this program, through him dying, through relationships breaking up, through my fellowship ego being shattered, because, I thought that, I wasn't this recovering giant anymore, through these great things, through these ego-shattering things, that I got closer and closer and closer to this God that is just so beautiful, but that I still don't understand. And it's being able to be empty, because in early recovery, when I was working those 12 steps, because I'll just get onto my sponsor in a minute, because it's so important that I talk to you about my sponsor. In those early days when I was first working the steps with my sponsor, I just felt my life blossoming. Everything just smelt so beautiful, and everything was just, life was blossoming for me, and it was just glory days, and I was just so full of gratitude, for just the little things. Because when I made my real surrender, I gave up everything, and I came to Bournemouth with nothing. I was 9.5 months pregnant. I had a couple of bags. I had nowhere to live, and I came to be where the recovery was. And it was a really, really big surrender, because I just wanted to be in the fellowship, and I just wanted to get well, and I just wanted to be part of this thing that I felt that I could be inside of, And that was the container for me that I never had growing up. And some of you guys might have had a really good container. You might have had parents that did teach you, give you some order and stability and all that sort of stuff. But this fellowship's been my parent. My mother's beautiful, my stepfather's beautiful, but they just, they needed parents. They still, and I did try to parent them, But, they just wouldn't listen to me. But this fellowship has been my mother and my father, and I say that with no disrespect to my family, but I had to learn, I had to be given some rules, and I was given some rules, and I was a robot recovering addict. First 6 years of recovery, I did everything right. Service, sponsorship, lived in the meetings, neglected my children. Service, sponsorship, lived in the meetings, educated myself, got a good job, all of this stuff. I was driven. I just thought, if I get this right, I can control everything. If I work the program, I can control God. It's probably what I was actually thinking. Luckily, I can't control God, and bad things still happen as a result of my own ego. And I learn from that, and I become stronger. But those meetings were perfect for me. They weren't too intense. They weren't too, for someone like me that's been brought up with not many rules, it would have been too much for someone to really have shoving, dictatorially telling me what I needed to do. I'd have just recoiled from that, you know. And the right person came into my life again at the right time. I got tricked into getting a commitment, yeah. I had this friend, yeah, in Bournemouth, when I moved to Bournemouth. And I eventually found somewhere to live. For a while I was living in a treatment centre dry house, but I wasn't in treatment. I was living in someone else's room in a treatment centre, pregnant, you know. It was like one of those things everyone had to hide me, this big pregnant woman. They're coming around to do checks today, we better hide the big pregnant woman. And her baby bath and her plant. Thanks to Steve Spiegel for that. Yeah, I've lost my thread. Sponsor, yeah. Jay, my friend Jay, she was in treatment with my husband at the time. And she had a commitment, yeah. She had a secretary commitment in AA, a secretary commitment in CA, and she also wanted a secretary commitment in NA. Not that she had a big ego or like being the centre of attention or anything. And I hadn't really had anyone explain the whole, you know, you get a sponsor, you work the steps, you get a commitment. It hadn't really been explained to me like that yet, yeah? And so she wanted to get a commitment. I didn't really know what that was. I know that sounds silly, but I was quite focused on the fact that I had a baby. And do you know, I was just going to the meetings and just going to the meetings and going to the meetings. That's all I was really doing. And trying to keep it together, to keep my life together. And she said, what we're going to do, we're going to go to this meeting. It's a women's meeting. I thought, I don't want to go there. There's only women there. Sounds awful. She goes, but we are. She's very convincing, you know. We're going to go to the women's meeting. I'm going to nominate you, and you're going to nominate me, and we're going to be alternate secretaries. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought a secretary was someone that did typing. Do you know what I mean? So we went there, and I did it, and I nominated her, and she nominated me, and then I had this bloody secretary commitment, and it meant I had to talk to a woman every week or every other week to get her to do a share at the meeting. And when I first went in the meeting, this is me in the meeting, all the way through the meeting. And the women would come up and introduce themselves to me and go, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm like, hi. I hated it. And then someone came and goes, yeah, well, look, this is all our phone numbers and you've got to ring someone. I can do a share next week. It's like that. It was, oh, man. And then eventually, do you know what? I got into it. Do you know what I mean? I actually sort of like quite liked talking to these women. They weren't that bad. Some of them were, but, you know. No, not really. You know, in the end, I loved them. And I loved that there was just a psychic change right there. Do you know what I mean? It was like suddenly I had these sisters, you know, and I used to take my little girl to the meeting. I had that commitment for so long. But a commitment at that meeting. And she would sit down. It was a really safe place to take your kids. And she would sit down and play really quietly, and we'd have our meeting. And I met my sponsor. And at that time in the fellowship I was in, there was 2 people that had worked all the steps, right? And they were like gods. Do you know what I mean? They were so scary, right? One of them was Italian, and if she looked at you, you felt like you were going to turn to stone or something. And she was a counsellor as well, so it's like she could read your mind. Do you know what I mean? So if you made like eye contact, you'd be like, oh, no, yeah. Do you know what I mean? You're sort of like squirming, oh my God. She was heavy, yeah? You know, you never wanted to ask her anything, not even to pass you a tea bag, do you know what I mean? And there was another woman, and she was just such a cockney, I just couldn't understand anything she said, to tell you the truth. And I would have probably asked her, but it was just like I couldn't understand anything she was saying. She was like, proper, like that, do you know what I mean? It was just like, okay. She seemed all right, but, you know, she spoke another language. And one day, this woman came up to the meeting, and she was a bit mad, really, but she was just so full of love, and she was just so friendly, and she was just so grateful for her recovery, and she was approachable, and I needed that, because the truth was I didn't know it at the time because I hadn't done my step 4, but I was scared of everyone, you know, and so, you know, I said to her, I'm working the steps, which is a lie because I hadn't started working the steps. I'm working the steps, and I wondered if I could meet up with you for coffee to talk about step 1. I didn't even know what step 1 was really. She's like, yeah, of course, that'd be lovely, because that's what she was like. Yeah, she's an actress, yeah. Of course, that'd be lovely, I'd love to. Like that. And we met up for coffee, and I went out for coffee. Half an hour I had coffee with her. I didn't even ask her, Jane, yeah. I didn't even ask her to sponsor me. It was like completely lost my bottle and my confidence. And so then 2 weeks later, I was like, I was wondering whether we could talk about that step 1 again. She's like, yeah, okay, let's meet up for coffee. I'd love to. And we sort of like got half, and I thought, Beth, you've just got to ask. It's like, will you sponsor me? Like that. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to. Like, I was like, thank God. And I don't know what I thought she was going to say, but it's like, I was so used to everything in life being a transaction. Everything's about a trade. It's like, I give you this, you give me that. I give you sex, you give me drugs. I give you drugs, you give me power. Everything is a trade, So for a woman to actually want to give me something for absolutely nothing was just like a mind-blowing concept. I know that sounds sad, but it really was. I just didn't get it. So I actually thought she was probably a bit mad. Do you know what I mean? That's probably why she wanted to sponsor me. But, I wanted to try this 12-step thing. And what's more, it was like I felt there was something missing. I was going to meetings, I had this commitment, but I just felt there was something that was missing. And she was sponsored by a woman in AA, so she'd done it through the Big Book. So again, my God showing up in my life, I went through the Big Book with her, And I just did everything she said. She just kept it so simple. I didn't have a clue what was happening to me. It was working in spite of me completely, 100%. I'm not one of these really cognitive people. I couldn't have, done 1, 2, and 3 and then gone to a meeting on Saturday and shared about 1, 2, and 3. It was just like totally, it was happening in here. It just wasn't happening up there at all. I was just going along with it, And I'd have been scary if I'd really sort of like made any connection. I'd have just like scared everyone off with my ego and my big mouth. It does happen. And so this thing was happening in here despite me. And she went to church, she went to church. So we did the step 3, and she was like, and I'd never prayed. I've been brought up with people that meditated and all this sort of stuff. I got taught to meditate when I was 12. Do you know what I mean? Restless, irritable, discontent, full of resentment about the goats, hated adults, and my mum decided I needed to learn how to meditate. And the thing was, about 20 times they tried to get me to meditate, right? When we were 6 or 7, the meditation people, whatever they are, the initiators they're called, they come and they show you how to meditate. So us kids, they turn up where we were on the ashram and they go, hey kids, we come, would you like meditation or do you want some chocolate? And I go, chocolate! Every single time, 20 times I chose chocolate. You would have thought that my mum would have got the message. I didn't want to meditate. I'd much rather have some chocolate. But she dragged me to this place and I had to learn how to meditate, and I practiced about twice. But obviously, I can go back to that now by the grace of the program. But she prayed, man, on her knees. And it was scary. And as we were on our knees in her front room, I looked up and I saw that she had a crucifix on her mantelpiece. And I was like, oh my God, this is the bit where she's going to like get a cape on or something. And I don't know. And I just felt like, the baby Jesus was watching me, see how bad I was. But I prayed anyway, and we did this prayer, and it was really quite beautiful because I could just feel how into it she was and how much she got off it, and it just sort of rubbed off on me. And she just said, Beth, I just want you to keep doing, pray with yourself every day, do a reading, pray every day, and do you want to do step 4? And I was like, yes. And I could get in with step 4 because it's like, logical. Do you know what I mean? It's like, boom, 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 do some columns. It's practical, If you say to me, Beth, go and dig a hole, every day, it's going to make you better. I'd be like, yeah, cool, I'll go and dig a hole. I have the willingness to do that because it's a practical thing, So I just did everything that she told me to do. And through going to that women's meeting and meeting my sponsor there, I can honestly say that was the first time in my life I trusted someone. 100%, with all of me. I did my step 5 with her and I just left nothing out. And it was just the most liberating and beautiful experience in my life. And she taught me to trust. And through sponsoring other women, I learned how to love. And that's my truth. She taught me how to trust, but sponsoring other women taught me how to love, because it was just that, I thought, wow, this is that, I want to give to you, I don't want anything back. This is what love must be. And that was my first conscious experience of that. You know, that genuine, like, I'll give this to you. If you want it, I'll give it to you, you know, and I'll share myself with you. And really, that's my story. From there, I just sponsored women and kept going to meetings and eventually stopped being a service junkie and looked after my kids a bit more and tried to get my house in order with some degree of failure and sometimes great success. And here I am. I've just celebrated 13 years. My ex-husband is 5 days cleaner than me. He'd like you to know that as well. He's 13 years and 5 days more than me. Yeah, that's right. And that's my story, really. I mean, you know, I think my biggest blessing was that I was a real outsider and I didn't really have anything. And I'd never really been taught anything that had a heart, a centre that was good. And I do believe that although not everyone in these meetings and in these rooms is, you know, well, that as we come together and as we honestly try to work these steps together, something really beautiful happens despite us all, you know. And I believe in it firmly today. I'm just as passionate about it today as I was when I first had this awakening experience. I still walk into my home group and I feel at home and I know it's the right place for me. I've watched people decide that this isn't for them, and I've watched them relapse, you know. And so far I thought there was going to be a few exceptions to the rule, and then, you know, 8 years later, 8 years out of the programme, and they've used. You know, I've really hoped that people were an exception to the rule, that maybe they just came here for a while to get well and they weren't addicts. And my experience is that, I mean, I don't have to understand anyone else's journey, but I have to know that this is the place that I need to be. And if this recovery thing didn't remain exciting for me, and if I didn't keep on learning, I wouldn't keep coming back. You know, the truth is that it's only sort of in the last couple of years that I've really been able to handle the dark times. You know, I'm one of these people that I will keep on going. I'm an activity addict. So bad stuff can happen, but I will just keep on going. Yeah? I'll keep to my routine. I'll keep disciplined. You know, I'm one of these people that's probably done inventory nearly every day since I've been told to do inventory. You know, I stick to it, you know. And I suppose I need to keep my head together. I'm just that type of addict. But my God's only ever given me what I can handle. And at the moment, I'm feeling quite empty, but at peace with the emptiness in me. You know, it's like prayer for me and my prayer life isn't always this, I'm rocking and full of spirit and I can feel God, you know, because that's very comforting. It's a comforting experience. It's beautiful to feel like that. But sometimes it isn't like that. Some days that I get up and I do my thing and I just feel quite empty, you know, and that's okay. You know, I get through my day and then tomorrow I get up and I do the same thing again. And, you know, and a message will come and I might not feel it, but it's still there and it's still part of me and I know that it's still going on. It's just that I'm not in touch with it, you know, and that's a massive blessing because for someone like me that's always, everything had to be so intense, you know, like in early recovery, I was so intense, you know, I was just running around like a Tasmanian devil, you know, just like sponsoring and doing service and taking on whole commitments to myself. Do you know what I mean? A tornado still, you know? And everything has to, you know, it's like relationships, you know, that's why I'm so crap at relationships, because everything's got to be so intense, and then when it's not intense, it's rubbish, you know what I mean? You know, I'm just the same as when I was smoking crack, really, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, I love you, you're great, yeah, you're the man of my dreams. Oh God, you're boring, I can't stand the sight of you. That's like the next day, do you know what I mean? So, you know, it's taken me a while to sort of, do you know what? Emptiness is all right as well, it's okay. Nothing bad's going to happen, you know. And, yeah, it's cool. And my two beautiful children live with me. and we have the most beautiful, beautiful relationships. And, I'll finish on this. For me, the 12 steps, this fellowship is all about relationships. And in early recovery, I used to think it was not about relationships. If people used to share about, I don't share about my relationships in meetings. Do you know what I mean? It's just I just don't. I'll bore other people with those things outside of meetings, But I didn't really get it. But it really is about relationships. Do you know? It's about the relationship that I have with my higher power. It's about the relationship I have with my kids. It's about the relationship I can have with my dysfunctional alcoholic mother. It's about the relationship I can have with my greedy brother who's just inherited £200,000 and not given me one penny. And still comes round to my house because he feels sick and eats all my food and leaves. Oh, dear. It's about the relationship I've got with my sister. It's about making amends to them. It's about the fact that they came to live in the town that I live in so they could be around me so that I could be helpful to them. It's about the relationships that I have with the women that I sponsor and I speak to on a weekly basis, Because without that, I am nothing, And that's not to say that I need to be reliant on that, because I can still do that stuff without the intensity, Because there's a real difference between intimacy and intensity. And it's taken me a hell of a long time to understand that. So, it's been intense, man. Thanks for letting me share. And, without really going into the gory details of my using, I can honestly say I was completely hopeless. I didn't want to know about life. I had no relationships to speak of. And it was from that place without hope that I have really been given a life that isn't beyond my wildest dreams, but it's because my dreams change all the time. So I don't really know how to describe it. It's just fulfilling. It's fulfilling in a really gentle way, and that is enough for me now. And as long as I can continue to be part of this fellowship, and as long as I can continue to sponsor women and they come into my life as and when they do, and they always do, they always show up when I need them, then I'll be a very happy member of this fellowship. So thank you all for listening to me. That's my time.